Hello, Divya. Divya. Hello, Divya. Can you hear me, Divya?
I can hear you, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. Somebody is the host. I am co-host actually. So.
Just a sec. Let me check. Because I also try to log in.
So you are, if you are host, make me host.
Okay, yeah, I'm doing that.
Hello.
I'm able to hear.
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I have made you host now.
Okay. Thank you. That is what I wanted.
Oh, yeah. So, sir, should
yes,
you know, I can log out from mine and from this conference room and go to my ID. Right?
Sure.
Oh, okay, I'll do
that. Sir, I'll be coordinating this thing, so you can manage.
Dr. Munir.
Yes, I'm here.
So let's start then. If you all are.
Yeah. Let's see.
Just tell me the format a little, Dr. Munir. Exactly what format are we following? Will you be just tell me how we are supposed to go about this?
See, as per the schedule, we have 5 presentations.
Yeah.
You might have got the schedule. So
yes.
We have time. The room will be open till 5 o'clock. So it's up to the chair to decide on how much time should be allotted to each presenter.
Hello.
Since we have.
Where I'm
actually, I have to present first, actually, as per schedule. But here I can't see any Zoom, just meeting topic and YouTube link. So I just confused and I want to send my PowerPoint presentation.
And will you be introducing the speakers or will they introduce themselves?
Ma'am, if you have the schedule, then you can actually call upon speakers and you can assign the timing for that. That will be better. I'll be coordinating this thing. I'm assigned to do that. Okay. And if you want, I can also call upon each participants and probably give a warning if they cross the timing.
Yes, I think that will be very good.
That I'll manage.
I think let us give them about what? Between 7 and 10 minutes maximum?
Yeah, 10 to 12 minutes you can give, and probably after 10 minutes I'll give a kind of warning so that they can wind up within the schedule.
Yes. And I think we can allow the speakers to introduce themselves, just one line of introduction.
Okay, that
way it will be faster rather than reading out the whole thing, so that we have some time for discussion at the end.
Okay, so let me see how many of the presenters have actually joined the room. Yeah. Let me call upon Professor Boban Aloysius if he is present. Professor Boban Aloysius.
I don't see.
Dr. Nebedia Prasoon Pal.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then we have Mr. Abdul Razak and Miss Muniba Zaman. Muniba Zaman, I can see her.
Muniba Zaman is here. I can see
okay.
her.
So that's a kind of. Then there is Miss Preeti Sahu. Is she present?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay. So we have. Then we have the last presenter, Miss Ramisa PM. Ramisa, I think she is also available.
Ramisa PM is here.
So.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ramisa. So out of 5 presenters, we have 4 in the room now. Probably the other person will join after some time. Or if he can give any kind of hint of his presence, Professor Boban Aloysius.
Really? Boban
Aloysius? No. So, ma'am, we have 4 presenters then now available. If the presenter joins in between, I think we should give him time.
Absolutely.
So you can, this is to all presenters as a coordinator of this room, that you are allotted 12 minutes, but after 10 minutes, I'll give a small warning so that you can wind up your presentation accordingly. So that after the 4 presentations, we'll have a question answer session. and where we can actually others can also post questions, and comments, insights, and clarifications can also be made in that. Okay, so off to the chair. Ma'am, okay.
Okay.
So you can call upon the thing. So how are you going to manage this? There will be a kind of any chair remarks or in the beginning.
I will give the chair remarks after every paper, and after this, everyone has presented, we'll have a discussion where questions can be taken from people who are attending as well as from the presenters to each other. So we'll keep about 10 minutes for the question answer session, and the chair remarks will come after each paper.
Okay. So then I'll call upon Dr. Nebidya Prasoon Pal. Did I pronounce it properly?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
he will be
Yeah, clearly.
presenting on a topic: societal and livelihood impact of migrant sex worker during COVID-19, a study of.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Hello.
I think
Am I
we lost.
am I audible? Am,
Yes, yes.
am I audible, ma'am?
Yes,
Am I audible, ma'am?
yes.
Hello.
Who's
Am I
speaking?
audible, sir? Yeah. Okay.
Who's
Okay.
speaking?
Okay. Okay.
Prasoon Pal?
Uh, yeah, ma'am. I
Yes,
am
yes, you are
Navita
audible.
Prashant.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah.
Okay, just
Okay. Okay.
let's
Uh,
start this properly. So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome
Yes,
to
yeah.
this
Good.
please present.
incredible
Good afternoon.
webinar that we have, this international conference, which has
Yeah.
people participating from across the world. It's a rare phenomenon because we have people practically from every nook and corner of the world who is part of this webinar. And we are going to be discussing, as always, the bigger topic for which we stand, migration and diaspora. And it's my proud privilege to be the chair of this incredible session. So, without wasting more time, I'm going to invite our first speaker, Naibedya Prasoon Pal, to do the presentation. And as agreed, Dr. Munir will be our time and conscience keeper. He'll warn us every time we exceed the time. And after every presentation, I will give my remarks, and we will keep a time slot at the end for an all round discussion on the issue. So, over to you, Naibedya Prasoon Pal. Uh,
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon to all. I am Dr. Navida Bishanpal, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Baharampur College. My topic is, hello. My topic, am I audible, sir?
yes,
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 sir.
you are audible.
Hello.
Perfectly audible.
Okay. My topic is societal and livelihood impact of migrant sex workers during COVID-19, a study of Sonagachi area in Kolkata. Okay. Uh, slideshow from beginning. Okay. Socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status measures the sociological and economic standing of an individual. It determines the socioeconomic position based on income, occupation, and health. The community of sex workers is susceptible to socioeconomic disadvantages. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 has exacerbated their socioeconomic issues. After nationwide lockdown, their life has come to a grinding halt along with their livelihood. This study focuses on the impact of the coronavirus crisis on the socio-economic life of migrant sex workers living in Sonagachi. Asia's largest red light area in Kolkata is Sonagachi. Adjacent to Sonagachi area, the scene was not different. Here only a few women sauntering down the Avinash Kaviraj Street, Masjid Bari Lane, and the adjoining by lanes of Sheikh Bagan and Rambagan and Ravindra Sharoni in North Calcutta as they wait for customers. There are at least 12,000 women is working in Sunagachi. Hundreds of sex workers, child, women, and transgender persons reach Sunagachi from the poorest districts of South Asia. Mobile phones are the only links between their families and descript borders of what is believed to be Asia's largest red light area, Shonagachi. But now with this coronavirus threat, people seem to be skeptical. Only 10% are currently working. On an average, not more than 500 customers are visiting the area. Here, sex workers faced food insecurity in the wake of COVID-19. At that pandemic situation, they not have the opportunity to go back home. India government is less concerned about the food insecurity among the sex worker. Many states of India have not taken any step inclusive of sex worker in their proposals related to financial aid, food distribution and welfare scheme. This is because the states lack records of the actual population of sex workers in their official database. Most of them do not have any Aadhaar card or ration card. So they are ultimately excluded from the food security schemes. In this current situation, sex workers are battling depression, anxiety, panic attacks, trauma, along with lack of medicines, food stuff, and money. A majority of the sex workers in Sunagachi have lost their livelihood due to nationwide pandemic situation. The income of hand to mouth sex workers have dwindled to zero, making it difficult for their survival. It is really impossible to get access to any healthcare service right now, and even if services were available, many sex workers do not have the money to pay the treatment. At that time in Kolkata, hospitals are overburdened with COVID-19 cases, and few are offering any other medical services. Assistance under the Prime Minister Garib Kalyan Yojana, a financial package to reduce the impact of COVID-19, rupees 500 per month would be transferred to women's accounts under the Jan Dhan Yojana for 3 months. The government had said to March 26 to 2020. None of the sex workers we spoke to had a Jan Dhan account. Even if some would qualify for the assistance, it is too little to sustain a family. They told us on April 15, 2020, that National Commission for Women, NCW, wrote to the government of West Bengal, Delhi and Maharashtra to provide sex workers with basic necessities and encourage community feeding with the assistance of civil society organizations. Proper measures should be taken for reallocation to maintain social distancing. Where the government is not helping, non-profit have stepped in. In Kolkata, the Durbar Mahila Samanvay Committee, a non-profit trying to end discrimination based on class, caste and gender, is collecting donations to distribute cooked food sex workers and their families. The non-profit New Light distributed over 250 food hampers in Kolkata, each of which can feed a family of 4 for 2 weeks, they said. Members of the Durbar committee said, girls now wearing a mask, using sanitizers and keeping safe distance, but that would not get them client. Female members of Durbar committee said, we have told them that before zeroing in on a customer, they must check whether he is having fever or cough, the symptoms of COVID-19. Many have also bought sanitizers. Sex workers are a socially marginalized coast into slum where social distancing is challenging, making it a hotbed for coronavirus. A substantial rate of economic instability as well as social discrimination was visible before the pandemic, thereby worsening their situation with lack of food, insecurity, safety, mental health concerning during COVID-19. Rangin Pirki, a NGO working for the menstrual health of sex workers, among other marginalized women, has written to the Ministry of Food and Supply, West Bengal, to facilitate the supply of sanitary napkins at subsidized rates. Over the past 3 months, the group has distributed food and essential items like sanitary napkins not only among residents of Sonagachi and South Kolkata's smaller red light pocket in Kalighat, but also slum dwellers, migrants returning to their home state of West Bengal, and villagers in the South and North Chobbish Parganas and Hooghly districts. Durbar Committee, a collective of 65,000 sex workers in West Bengal, has written to the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee outlining the need for a community quarantine center where sex workers could remain without being stigmatized. Committee has identified Shubham Hall on Masjid Bari Street in the Sonagachi area for establishing the community center. Public health scientist and founder of Durbar Committee, Dr. Smarajit Jana, said sex workers were continually slipping through the cracks in the public distribution system as most of them do not possess a ration card. Temporary cards were arranged for sex workers with the help from the local councillor, but they are inadequate. Around 5 volunteers visited Sonagachi 6 times, each time with 250 kits comprised 5 kilos of rice, 2 kilos of flour, and 1 kilo of lentils, besides salt and oil. All the volunteers wore masks as they went into the lanes, and the women would come out and collect it from them to maintain effective physical distance. Long-term impact. Even after the lockdown ends, sex workers would have to be very careful about their customers to avoid catching COVID-19. Sex workers should refuse unknown customers because of the fear of the novel coronavirus, even though this would impact her income. It is recommended that the government should ensure that the house owner cannot force sex workers to evacuate their rental room due to their failure in paying rent. Additionally, the government should notify all property owners for the suspension of rent payment for at least 3 months. The right to necessary healthcare facilities is a fundamental human right denied to the community of sex workers. It is injustice. Small steps and scattered help from non-profit organizations will not suffice. Government needs to step in. If the government cannot do it for them, not only these 12,000 sex workers in Sonagachi, but also the entire city will be at stake. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Paul. That was a very interesting presentation, and thanks also for finishing in time. Have you finished your presentation? Dr. Naivedya?
I think he has muted himself.
Oh. Dr. Naivedya, you have muted yourself.
We still have time if he needs to conclude his presentation. We can still give 2 minutes if he needs. I think there is some connection issue.
He's got a connection issue, yes.
Otherwise, we can go to next presentation. No issue. He can come back.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I will reserve my comments for when he comes back because he needs to hear it.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so Dr. Munir, let's have this.
Okay, so with the permission of the chair, I call upon the next presenter, Mr. Abdul Razak and Ms. Muniba Zaman. Muniba
Yes,
Zaman
sir.
is present here.
Yeah, we are present.
Okay, so she'll be presenting a paper on the coupling effect of COVID-19 lockdown and digital divide on migrating Indian students.
Yes, sir. Abdul Razak will be presenting the paper, and I'll present the PPT, and he'll be discussing it further.
Also, if the two of you could
I think he has to show up very soon.
Sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you.
I said just one line introduction of the two of
Okay.
you as you start speaking.
Introduction of ourselves first.
Yes, yes.
Myself Abdul Razak, student in Jamia Millia Islam.
So he is getting some network issues. Actually, he's
Am I audible?
You're audible, Abdul, but you are not entirely audible.
Myself Abdul. I am master students at Jamia Millia New Delhi.
Okay. Welcome aboard, Abdul.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Muniba Zama, and I am pursuing my post-graduation from Jamia Millia Islamia University. And this is our paper, which I have co-authored with Abdul Razak, who is going to present our views and our paper on the following topic, that is the coupling effect on the Indian migrating students, which includes the lockdown as well as the digital divide which we have in our education system. So I request to allow sharing my screen so that we can all move forward with the PPT.
You can do. You are
Okay, thank you. The host disabled participant screen sharing. This is what it is showing when I tried.
No, 1 minute.
Sure.
1 minute. Your name is Muniba Zaman.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we can do. Now we can.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now.
Can you all see the PPT?
Yes, I started. Okay.
Yes, Muniba, it's visible.
Razak, is it visible? Razak?
Not yet.
It's not visible to you.
Not.
But Nandini ma'am and Dr. Munir, can you see it?
Yes, it's visible. It's visible.
Okay, but Razak, it's visible. I think you are having some network issue.
I think Razak is having some issues.
Razak?
See, if you have access to that, then you can also start using
Maybe start
if you are presenting.
Yeah, I just ask him if he's having some severe problem in terms of the network, then I'll start. Actually,
Visible. In this, I get logged off. In then my co-author Muniba Zaman.
Abdul has come back again.
Hello.
Abdul, please
Hello.
unmute yourself.
Yes, PPT is visible now. In case I get logged off, my co-author.
okay, I'll proceed in case, and then you come back and let me know which slide are you on.
Hello.
I'm not actually the
Yes,
network
it's
issue is
visible
such.
and audible.
Not audible.
You're audible, but your voice is breaking. So sometimes we are able to hear you, sometimes we are not.
I think you can start the presentation now.
Okay. I'll start with it and he can join in between. So, okay. As you can see on the PPT, our topic is the coupling effect of COVID-19 lockdown and digital divide on migrating Indian students. Ma'am and sir, I request if any times you are not able to hear me or not able to see the screen, please let me know. Okay. So, introduction.
Sure.
Up to 1.6 billion. This is basically the facts and the data by UNICEF, ILO, NCMH, all the leading research institutes that we have in the world. So up to 1.6 billion children and young people have affected by school closures. Many do not have internet access at home. This is the data provided by UNICEF. The ILO reports titled Youth and COVID-19 2020 is alarmingly saying that half of the world's youth are subject to anxiety or depression due to COVID-19 lockdown. And NCMH is of the view that India topped among the countries with the greatest burden of mental disorders. Now we are aligning all these things with the education system. Our sole focus is on the Indian migrating students, and India being the world's largest education system with over 250 million students enrolled. This amounts for a severe care of the situation. So this is the backdrop of our study. Aim of the paper aimed at finding the nature of stress on migrating Indian students due to academic institution closure. Okay. And the paper also tries to analyze how the existing digital divide in India. So we are actually trying to find out the coupling effect of the lockdown and the digital divide in India, which was already present. And this lockdown and COVID situation exacerbated it further. So already stressed in terms of resources and in terms of the technology that we are, especially the students, what impact does it have? This was the aim of our paper. Methodology, migrating Indian students from every corner of India are targeted for our study. It was done on the basis of the snowball sampling. We have collected around 120 respondents' data, and we prepared a structured questionnaire and then we recorded them. The data was analyzed with the SPSS version 22.0. Descriptive statistics like frequency and cross tabulation was conducted. Okay, let's discuss our first foremost issue of mental health. What is the mental health? Well, mental health is an integral part of our health. It includes the emotional, psychological, and social well-being of ourselves, and it is an integral part. When I'm saying integral, we are focusing on this word. Why? Because we generally have this tendency, especially talking about in India, that mental health is always being neglected. And when it comes to student, the young ones, it is not being taken into account, and the people do not pay heed to it. They take it like in a very light way, but it is an integral part of the overall health that we have. Mental health is determined by a range of socioeconomic, biological, and environmental factors. All of them affects us. The digital divide. Well, digital divide can be summarized in two simple lines: is the gap between the have and have-nots that we already have in terms of the technological inputs, in terms of the software and hardwares which we have or may not have. That is the digital divide. The NSSO, National Statistical Survey Organization 2014 reports highlights that 32 million children are already out of school before the pandemic. And when this shift happened to the e-learning, so we can imagine what number of dropouts are now going to come in the next survey. In India, only 23.8 households have internet facility, which I would like to highlight that urban have 42% and rural has 14.9%, itself highlighting the digital gap that we have. So this sudden digital shift in education induced by lockdown further exacerbated the situation. A total of 320 million learners in India have been adversely affected because of this transition to the e-learning industry, which was kind of a sudden. It was not done in a phased manner. And 1.5 million schools that we have, as you can see, are not equipped with such facilities that can cater to that. And all of these, which is going to impact the mental health ultimately. Now, the question is why lockdown? So, what is a coronavirus? What is that? We already have MERS and SARS in our, in our world, but and coronavirus is a part of it. But it's a novel coronavirus, as we say, because the strain of this virus has been recently found, and it is a communicable disease. It can be transmitted, and so, to stop this, the government all over has resorted to rampant awareness campaigns and the rounds of nationwide lockdowns. And in India, it happened all of a sudden with one announcement. It was a strict nationwide lockdowns. It was open in phased, but it was imposed all of a sudden all over the country. So that was the situation of India. Now, data on migrating Indian students. As you can see, the statistical survey says that a total of 37 lakh people have moved, okay, for the last 10 years, and that shows a dim academic landscape. And in terms of the states, Karnataka has the largest exodus of students pursuing education from other states, which is 1.8 lakh, and Uttar Pradesh sent more students in a year, 1.1 lakh. And even in international students, when we say more than 5 million students are outside studying, they're studying outside their home country. Yes, this is the frequency tabulation that we have done based on the respondents' data. Did they able to reach home during lockdown? So yes, no, and prefer not to go home. As you can see, it shows the percentage that people were not willing to go home, some of them, and some of them were willing to go, and others, you can see there is not much difference between the yes and no. Okay. Mental stress on migrating students due to pandemic. This tabulation shows, as you can see, please excuse me a minute. Razak, are you here?
Yes.
Would you like to continue with this? I'm asking.
Okay.
Okay.
So about 82 students, we have surveyed 100 students, out of which 82 students were negatively affected due to digital shift in education. And about those 82 students, 63 were having 63 faced severe, very severe mental health issues, and 11 faced moderately severe mental health issues. And then another 11% who faced positive, who were positively affected, means they utilized the lockdown period as a positive source of learning new things. So about the 11 students who used the lockdown time positively, of them 9 were facing severe mental health issues. These 9 may be due to some other factors, maybe due to feeling of isolation or due to feeling of lack of concentration, anything. So we have covered this in the next slide. Please go to the next slide. Okay, so out of the 100 students, 38 students faced mental health issues, or they were worried because of the fear of performing badly in upcoming exams. And most of the students, about 47 students, of losing opportunities pandemic. So this was the specific problems which affected the individual students. So next slide. Okay, and so digital shift in education, we have done the frequency or descriptive frequency of all the 100 students. And the digital shift in education, we have categorized in 3 category for students for whom the digital shift was very problematic, that is about 77%. And then 18% faced is slightly problematic. And then for about 5% students, the digital shift was not problematic at all. They were comfortable with it. So this, we can see that most of the students faced very, for them this was very problematic, that's this digital shift in education. Next slide. Okay, now we have categorized the specific problems that students faced problem due to the digital shift in education. The most of the students faced problem due to digital shift was due to the poor internet connection. As you can see, I am also facing the problem due to my poor internet connection or poor bandwidth. And then the second most primary reason, most dominant reason was the feeling of isolation. 25% students felt problem or mental health issues due to digital shift because of the feeling of isolation, and the other 10% felt problem due to lack of concentration on online learning. Next slide, please. So we have done a cross tabulation of digital shift in education and mental health. So this cross tabulation was done on a spaces. The cross tabulation shows that about the 77 students who were facing, who have very problematic, who faced digital education very problematic, of whom 58 faced very severe mental health issues, and another 11 persons faced moderate mental health issues, and the other 18% students who consider digital shift in education problematic, of them 14% students faced very severe mental health issues, and other two faced moderately or severe mental health issues. Next, please. Next. So then we have summarized all the things together. So our aim of the paper was to show the coupling impact. So coupling impact of both things. First, corona-led lockdown, the impact of lockdown on mental health, and the second was impact of digital shift in education on mental health. So we are studying the migrating Indian students, and we are seeing the coupling impact of both two factors. So finally we concluded, and we justify our findings with our last table, which shows that the out of the 100 students who were surveyed, 75 students faced very severe mental health issues. That could be due to variety of reasons. The primary reasons of them would be either corona-led lockdown, which caused zero or no social contacts, or the second reason we have considered here was the digital shift in education. Among the that was considered the primary two factors which impacted the mental health, and the total outcome of which is that the 75% students faced the severe mental health issues. This could be either of the two factors. So we have considered, we are showing here the coupling impact, or this could be due to the both the factors. And 13% students face the moderately severe mental health issues, and 8% students face slightly severe mental health issues, and 4% students were normal. They didn't face any mental health issues. Next slide. So we
Sorry
have
to interrupt. This is you have already crossed 10 minutes. It's 11 minutes. So if you can wind up in
yeah, this is
1 or 2 minutes.
We're just winding up, so this conclusion is left, sir.
Yeah.
So this is we conclude there's a need of our to bridge the digital divide, so that we can uh, education for all and mental health for all. So we can bridge this digital divide by the combined effect of all the countries together. And the second, we have concluded in the positive manner or the optimistic manner that there's a pressing need to see the mental health of students differently. There's initiatives should be taken from the government, and policies should be made and aligned in taking view of the mental health vulnerabilities of the student section of Indian, mainly the migrating Indian students. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, sir. This is and what next we have forwarded is that a time of crisis is also an opportunity for all the education systems. So this might be the sudden one, but in the end, we all have to face and make technology a part of our lives. And when the situation has arrived, we should take proper steps in including it in our lives. And we should also build emotional resilience into our minds so that our mental health remains in good health. So that's all for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was a very interesting presentation, Abdul and Muniba. And you bring forward very pertinent points. Mental issue is definitely a very, very pertinent point in today's day and age when we are facing the coronavirus situation where people are confined to their households. You also make very pertinent points about the digital divide and the how it affects a person's mind and how the students are suffering. And you also talk about the migrating students. My only submission here would be, I thought your canvas was a bit too wide. You've talked about students across India, which I don't know how many students we are talking about, what level of students are we talking about. So I would think a study like this, and even when you talk about mental health, mental health is a huge thing, to club it under one umbrella term is not doing justice to it, because there are so many subsidiary situations to a person's mental condition. And therefore, what I would suggest in your study, narrow down the space that we are talking about. That way it will become a very focused study. So if, let's suppose, you all are doing college education, or you're doing school education where children have traveled from other places to come to certain schools. Let's say you were doing the KV schools, or you were doing the government colleges, DU colleges, or Jamia, or if you have a narrowed down focus on the student body that you're talking about, then the study becomes more focused, and your suggestions to the government or to other agencies become more nuanced. Otherwise, it's a very it's a very broad suggestion. If I say, oh, the digital divide should be taken care of so that students don't suffer, it's not saying much. It's all out there, we know about it. So my suggestion to you would be, the background to your study, or the focus of your study, I enjoyed. It's a very pertinent topic. But what I now want, and I think you should do, is narrow down your focus so that you have a more the particular area on which you now select and you work. And then I would like to look at the findings that you have, because those then will become very, very useful to put in government manuals or wherever else that we might put it into. But excellent work, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll take into consideration all the points that you mentioned.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much.
Thank you. So we have the next presentation by Ms. Preeti Sahu. She'll be speaking on nation building in the time of pandemic, impact of COVID-19 on the cross-border labor migration in Central Asia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Greetings to the respected chair and my fellow presenters. I am Preeti Sahu, and I am a doctoral candidate at Jawaharlal Nehru University. My specialization is Central Asian politics. And my topic of today's presentation is nation building in the time of pandemic, impact of COVID-19 on cross-border labor migration in Central Asia. Central Asia has been an ethnic hotspot thanks to its centuries-old legacy of migration. The 5 post-Soviet Central Asian states, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan, have exchanged migrant laborers since ancient times. Labor migration is an increasingly important socio-economic and political phenomenon in the region. Kazakhstan hosts the maximum number of labor migrants, with around 3 million migrants working in both formal and informal sectors. In the entire region, there are about 7 to 8 million migrant workers engaged in industrial, agricultural, hotel management work, tourism, food, mining, and construction sectors as well. Therefore, these migrant workers are an important part of national economies of each of these republics, especially Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. This paper argues that as an important component of nation building process, migrant workers should be granted basic human rights and protection by host countries of Central Asia, especially in the post-pandemic period. There has been an elaborate academic discussion around the role of labor migration in nation building process. The premise is that labor migration plays significant role in nation building by helping states with economic development. In some cases, it also helps in social and cultural upliftment and richness by providing a sound democratic atmosphere. Nonetheless, migrant workers are viewed both as an opportunity and challenge towards nation building. They are not one-way streets, and they originate from less secure regions or lower income countries to more secure places in terms of jobs and lifestyle opportunities. In return, they offer a the manforce required for rapid industrialization and for development of other sectors such as agriculture and services. In Central Asia, too, communities have benefited from cross-border migrations, cross-border labor mobility. For Central Asian states, migrant workers are a way to escape economic hardship posed by a shortage of skilled and unskilled laborers in all the republics. especially in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, two of the fastest growing economies in the region. Migrant workers are an integral part of the economy. If we are to believe World Bank report, the migrant workers contribute up to 12% of Kazakhstan's GDP. COVID-19 has hit Central Asian countries and the migrant workers like the rest of the world. Restrictions on human mobility along with social distancing measures have um, pushed majority of governments to stall borders, movement across borders. As a result, reports of discrimination and deprivation against migrant workers have been evident. The most significant areas of migrant workers' life that has been affected due to COVID-19 are employment and health. After WHO labeled the coronavirus as pandemic, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan were one of the first states to impose a lockdown, which left the migrant workers blindsided. They could not go back to their homes and could not earn their wages to sustain themselves either. The closure of factories and construction sites, restaurants, shops, hotels, etc., created massive financial challenges for them. Many workers were also put or sent to downtime as their working hours were reduced. Several small and medium-sized enterprises filed for bankruptcy, so even their migrant workers lost their jobs. Their hygiene and sanitation supply were also in a critical shortage because even in the market, even in the Central Asian market, the supply of these resources were scarce. And if after the lockdown was announced, there was a hurry to buy these items, so it also led to the scarcity. The governments of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan provided some financial support to the workers' community as they established residential camps in some places. However, despite these measures, there was a shortage of adequate food and safety kits as well. The situation of female migrant workers was more vulnerable because of the nature of their jobs. They are mostly employed as house helps and cleaners and cooks in rural areas, or even in the suburbs. So their employments were cut off during the lockdown. Um, the peaking demand and scarce supply of the essential products also created a problem for wage earning migrants as they could not afford to access them. And since it was prohibited to go out without masks and they didn't have access to masks in the at least in the first month of the lockdown, which was March and like 1st of April, so it became more difficult for the workers to leave their asylums and look for scrap work or food or any necessary items for that matter. And they could not even access coronavirus testing at first, and the first testing of migrant workers for free started in late April, that too in Kazakhstan only. While the migrant workers experienced a difficult time in the host states, even in their home states, the situation was difficult because suppose in Kazakhstan, most of the migrant workers migrate from Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan, and these countries are economically more vulnerable than Kazakhstan itself. And there are basically two challenges that the Central Asian states are facing in dealing with the migrant labor issue, and these are mostly economic and legal. And the states have already suffered from significant economic downturn due to the lockdown, and it is set to deepen the financial problems in the upcoming months. Most of the economies are already struggling at normal times to meet with the requirements of their citizens, let alone the migrants. And during the pandemic, the burden has doubled. Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, especially, are recognized as one of the most vulnerable economies in the former Soviet, among former Soviet republics, and 80% of their population is considered below national poverty line. And Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan went through a second lockdown in July and August, and this also was added by the oil prices and the oil price shock in the springtime. And Kazakhstan have implemented certain short-term measures for public health and local economy, especially for small firms. But the resources have exhausted quickly due to the disturbances in oil price and the lessening amount of export, and also decrease in revenue correction. Um, there are also legal challenges. The ethnic politics of Central Asian region has been a complicated one, and it has affected the mutual relationship among countries. The ethnic identities have become a bone of contention due to several ethnic clashes during the 1990s, just before their independence. And even after 1991, when they got independence, the nation building process has been based on ethno nationalism. So the legal framework in each of the states provides its people utmost priority in all aspects of public and personal life, from education to employment and to health. And the constitutional laws for the locals are quite different from those made for workers. For example, in Kazakhstan, the status of Kazakh workers is at more advantages than Tajik, Uzbek, or Kyrgyz workers. These laws provide migrant workers with freedom of labor and choice of occupation, right to safe working conditions as well. Uh, However, it has been found in reports such as the report of International Federation for Human Rights that migrant workers often work under unhygienic conditions and are paid unequal salaries. Uh, to solve these issues faced by the migrant workers, several approaches are required. And first of which is transparency in revealing the actual number of COVID cases among migrant workers, because there have been allegations that Turkmenistan and Tajikistan particularly haven't revealed the actual number of coronavirus cases. To ensure the safety of migrant workers, the countries need to accumulate and reveal legit information so that it can be worked upon. And the states also need to realize that with an economic slowdown coming ahead, they will need both skilled and unskilled laborers for their economy to restructure the economy. Therefore, they need to take care of the laborers so that they do not migrate to states that are providing better facilities to migrant workers, such as Russia, for example. And the next step can be for the states to safeguard human rights for all, take a victim-centered approach, and ensure equality before law. A victim-centered approach is necessary to place the rights of victims above all considerations to ensure them justice. United Nations has also offered some solid measures to protect migrant workers both during the lockdowns and in normal times as well. And they include effective knowledge base for the migrant workers about their rights and the numbers of migrant workers, their jobs, their background, uh, so that the discrimination against them can be addressed. And mostly when states are already facing economic challenges to meet with all the requirements of the migrant workers, the private employers can take up this responsibility and provide certain facilities such as paying remuneration at the right time, so that the workers uh, are not supposed to burn through uh, their savings. And most importantly, the migrant workers deserve access to all the information regarding their rights and remedies that the host states and employers provide. It is one of the few ways to ensure their rights in the future. This is all with my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti Sahu, for finishing your presentation within the stipulated time.
You made
So
Dr.
we have
job easier. So Preeti, thank you so much for your paper. Again, very interesting topic and well argued. And you take us to the problems of the migrant laborers in Central Asia, and you argue that they live in terrible conditions. They are treated as second-class citizens, and the host country, more often than not, discriminates against them. And I would say that it's not just countries like the ones that you mentioned, it's countries across, unfortunately. and there are different pay structures that exist, whether we are talking about UAE or whether we are talking about, so it is across that we see this kind of a situation where, and of course the migrant labor community, even if they're migrating from Bihar to Delhi, or they're migrating across seas, or they're migrating, as you talk about, in Central Asia, the situation seems to be pretty similar in terms of the discrimination and in terms of the sordid conditions in which they are forced to exist. And the fact that in spite of UN having all and the human rights organizations wanting better things for them, unfortunately, it has not happened. It has not been addressed. Again, what I would suggest to you, while this is great for a doctoral thesis, presumably that's what you're working towards, but when you do a paper presentation, a more focused approach is always, something which is preferred. So if you had taken up, let's say, the gendered aspect, if you had talked about the women laborers and what specific issues they are facing in which specific country and how that can be remedied, that would lend it a more focused and nuanced kind of a thing. So this is topic for a very vast study, which I presume you're doing for your doctoral work. So while I really enjoyed your paper, but when you do a presentation of this kind, do keep in mind that a more focused and nuanced approach is always preferred over a very, very vast area, which you probably are working towards a thesis.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So we have the next presentation by Ms. Ramisa PM. She'll be presenting on the role of government and NGOs in the integration of returned migrants, a case study of the state of Kerala, India in the context of COVID-19.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, Ramisa, you're audible.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Ramisa. I'm doing my PhD in the Department of English in the University of Hyderabad. And for today's presentation, my paper is titled The Role of Government and Non-Governmental Organizations in the Integration of Returned Migrants, a case study of state of Kerala, India in the context of COVID-19. So I'll begin with a brief economic background to migration in Kerala. The growth in GDP and high per capita income in Kerala are indebted to the remittances of migrant population over the past few decades. As per the government figures, in 2018, 85,000 crore was sent by the expatriates to the state, which has now touched over 1 lakh crore. Their remittances in bank is estimated as 1.69 lakh crores. Demographically, Kerala stands as an important provider of labor force to the foreign nations, especially Gulf countries, and a significant job market to the migrant workers from different northern Indian states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, Assam, and West Bengal. As Professor Irudaya Rajan observes, I quote, India has somewhere close to 20 million international migrants. Half of these are in the 6 Gulf countries. Out of these, some 2.5 million are from the southern state of Kerala. So COVID-19, Kerala will be badly affected by the COVID-19. So during lockdown, the government prioritized the health care of the returned migrants in the process of integration. Having established a detailed COVID protocol in the initial stage itself, as the first case of the virus in India was reported in the state of Kerala, the government could effectively lay out a mechanism of contact tracing and quarantine. The returned migrants were benefited from the zero cost or subsidized healthcare facility, quarantine, and transportation as the primary stage of integration. Now, regarding policy level interventions from the government, the return of the migrant population was facilitated through the online platform of NORCA, that is the Non-Resident Keralites Affairs in the state. The government of Kerala approved a sum of 5,000 rupees to each migrant on arrival towards the travel expense based on application. The scheme benefited many, yet a concrete data on the beneficiaries is not yet publicized. Along with the immediate monetary aid via NORCA, the government announced Dream Kerala project as a proposal to effectively utilize the skills and experiences of the returned migrants to the state welfare by creating more employment opportunities. The project includes the maintenance of a skill registry, option to find required employees, and an open invitation to submit ideas and proposals. The concerned authorities have expressed their plan to make use of the project as a user interface. Dream Kerala project can be cited as an ambitious policy-level intervention from the government of Kerala towards the integration of returned migrants. Though the final outcome of the project is not yet known to the public, the civil society and migrant population nurture high hopes towards the project, considering the fact that Dream Kerala project is an esteemed part of the 100 Days, 100 Programs political campaign of the present government as a stepping stone to the upcoming legislative elections in the state of Kerala. Apart from this, the government also ensured the inclusion of migrants, that is both internal and returned migrants, in the public food distribution system as an immediate pandemic relief measure, which is still continuing. The government also regularized the private healthcare system in order to establish fair access to healthcare in the wake of COVID-19. The migrants were also benefited from the bank moratorium announced by Reserve Bank of India. Further, the local body government intervened to extend the period from local money lenders and landlords, which acted as temporary financial relief to many returned migrants in the state. The central government's Shramik Train special service to assist the internal migrants to return to their homelands also marked as an important benchmark in the process of return in India. However, the government received huge criticism over the initial delay. The government of Kerala has also announced various long-term policies and programs to boost the local economy by promoting small-scale industries and agriculture sector, which is expected to help the integration of migrants as well. Now let's look at the impact of non-governmental organizations in the process of integration, as is evident in the title. The state witnessed an unending support of various youth volunteer initiatives, community organizations, alumni associations, charity trusts, and Pravasi cultural forums in the rehabilitation programs during the lockdown. These non-governmental organizations extended their constant support in various tasks, ranging from the distribution of groceries, arranging cooked meals to those who are in quarantine, distribution of masks, sanitizers, and addressing other medical needs, etc. Some of these organizations provided monetary supports to stranded migrants towards the travel expenses. The Chief Minister of Kerala, Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan, inaugurated a volunteer service scheme during the lockdown named Sannadha Sena and encouraged the youth to register in the online portal. Upon submitting the necessary documents, the selected volunteers were given awareness campaigns and online training by the field experts. These trained volunteers were given special permits and effectively deployed in hospitals, quarantine centers, helpline call centers, etc. Now some reflections on the future of migration pattern in the state. So I'm quoting Professor Irudaya Rajan here. I quote, overall, I expect some 3 lakh Indians to return from the Gulf by September, December because of COVID-19. Of these, at least 1 lakh will be what I call the eventual returnees. Another 1 lakh of these will re-migrate. I have seen this happening post the 2008 crisis, during the Gulf Wars, during the Nitakat crisis in Saudi Arabia. He further focuses on the necessity of conducting skill acquisition programs to the migrants in order to suit the demands of the changes in the global job market. So a large majority of the returned migrants will eventually re-migrate, according to the historic pattern of migration in Kerala. Therefore, the stakeholders need to accommodate the reality of resuming migrant mobility and convert it into policy changes to safeguard the interest of migrants, along with addressing the issue of integration. Now, I am going to address some major gaps and challenges in the integration policies. The responsibility of the welfare state lays in the inclusion of the vulnerable population in its policy-making parameters. In the context of integration of returned migrants in the state of Kerala, unfortunately, the elderly migrant population has to be identified as one of the most vulnerable groups. Unlike the young, skilled and semi-skilled migrant populations who are estimated to either return to their respective workplaces or to find new job markets abroad, elderly migrants or senior migrants would fall through the cracks for their age would be a barrier to compete in the job market. And additionally, the shift or varying visa rules in the GCC countries also add burden to them. So the notion of building back better in the post-pandemic era needs to be inclusive. Similarly, another gap can be identified as the absolute silence on the estimated widening of gender gaps in the process of migration in the post-pandemic era. All these policies or interventions from the government haven't addressed any of the questions that I have listed. The state also has to address the notion of gender gap in the process of return and integration and introduce more effective policies and regulations, especially regarding the well-being of female domestic migrant workers. I'd like to conclude this paper by pointing out the limitation of the study, that is the absence of updated data on the returning migrants and interstate migrants. Accurate and timely data is essential in the process of policy making, and it's also essential to ensure transparency of the system by providing the details of those migrants who have actually benefited from the policies and to discuss further plan of actions. Therefore, the government has the obligation to publicize updated and accurate data of returned migrants for effective policy making and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramisa. You bring to fore something very interesting. You talk about the work that Kerala government has done or not done in managing the migrant situation. So the first bit of your paper, if I'm to understand you correctly, you do talk about the good measures that the Kerala government has taken and in managing the migrant situation. And effectively, I think all of India has been looking at Kerala for the kind of stellar work that it has been doing as compared probably to other states in India. So it has been very exciting, the kind of work that Kerala has been doing. But of course, you're very right that there are gaps. We still don't know if the official figures are correct in terms of how many migrant people, the returning migrants particularly, and their current situation, and knowing fully well that they're going to go away yet again. And you're also right to point out that the elderly and the female migrant, as always, under any situation, they're the worst affected. Again, I think I really enjoyed your paper, but my sole contention would be that I see this across papers that
Exactly.
it's kind of really vast. You talk about, in your case, you've talked about an entire state and the state's entire management of the migrant situation. I would a more focused study. It's a huge scope, and you've done it well, admittedly. But I would, what I'm looking for and probably missing is a more nuanced approach, a more focused and a more nuanced approach. Because effectively, everything that you have told us, not to take away from your research, but one has been reading Irudaya Rajan, so I do know what he's been talking about. I know, so it's very much in the public domain. But as a researcher, I would want you to don't take this as a criticism. It's merely a suggestion, because all of you are young doctoral candidates, or just in your masters. Since you are stepping up and doing research, it always helps if you have sort of narrowed down your focus a bit and you bring your expertise into it. Because what is already available in the public domain, what we already know about, the facts and figures, maybe a Google search will tell us, or a bit of a little more research will tell us. What we are looking for from you guys is probably a little more than that. Is your nuanced understanding of the subject, and what do you, after understanding and analyzing that particular niche area, what is it that you have to say? So just think about it, that maybe there is an area and you wish to focus particularly on that. But otherwise, all your points are well taken, and it was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Hope the first person, Professor Boban Aloysius, is not in the room. Then we can actually open this room for discussion. And if you have any specific question, queries, insights, comments, can post and be brief about that.
Dr. Munir, there's one person who's saying that he's supposed to be presenting during this block. CLN, okay,
Yes.
it's a message.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, I'm Chinelo Njaka. I'm supposed to be presenting in this session, but for some reason the timing didn't match up. It's 10:30 here in London, so GMT, and the schedule says 11:30 Geneva, but it seems like the session has started prior to that. So I'm sorry for my absence at the beginning.
That's okay. We do have time. So should we have her presentation?
Yeah, I think I think you have got 10 minutes for presentation, and you can present your paper.
Okay. Would I be able to use my slides? I've prepared slides.
Yes. Yes.
You can share the screen.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Oh, I think I need to be enabled.
1 minute. Let me see.
Okay, it's still not working for me.
It's not working.
Is Dr. Sahu there? He did something
Yeah,
last.
I think it's
What do I have to do?
You have to facilitate CLN's, she'd like to.
Okay, present. Okay.
She'd like to present her screen.
She can do now.
CLN.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, it's working, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my paper is titled Black Diasporas in the United Kingdom. Sorry, just a second. COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, and the International Decade for People of African Descent. Two major and defining moments of the social change have come to the fore around the world and within the United Kingdom during 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic and the global Black Lives Matter anti-racism protests and initiatives following the murder of George Floyd Jr. by police on the 27th of May, 2020 in Minneapolis, Minnesota in the United States. COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter anti-racism protests are occurring during the middle of the International Decade of People of African Descent, or IDPAD. Both moments provide opportunities to expand or to examine the two main Black diasporic communities present in the United Kingdom, which are Black African and Black Caribbean groups. In this paper, there are several limitations, admittedly. It is a broad overview of data that is currently being generated by various organizations, but it's all very new because COVID-19 hasn't even been around for a year yet. And because of that, the data available is very limited and it's variable in quality. There's some studies that are higher quality and some are lower quality. In the UK specifically, there's inconsistent data disaggregation by ethnicity. Sometimes it's aggregated by white and non-white, basically, or if the non-white groups are disaggregated even further, then it's not consistent with on level of race and ethnicity. So that is represented in the data, which makes it variable. And then my analyses are low-level analyses. This is meant to be a preliminary report to further research goals in additional work. Okay, so the International Decade for People of African Descent is UN declared decade between 2015 and 2024. There's three-pillar theme of recognition, justice, and development. IDPAD provides a collaborative framework for UN member states, civil society, local communities, and individuals to implement activities that fall under a broad theme, both globally situated within more localized contexts, and within localized contexts. With the declaration of IDPAD, UN recognizes that racisms, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerances, both indirectly, or direct and indirect, de facto and de jure, continue to manifest themselves in inequality and disadvantage for people of African descent around the world. At its midpoint, unfortunately, only a handful of member states have committed to implement IDPAD, and at the national level, and the UK is not one of the countries that have done so. They've announced no plans to implement it, and despite the UK's noted history of and contemporary structural and societal racial inequalities. Skip ahead. Black Lives Matter UK is has somewhat of a specific remit. It is within the global network of Black Lives Matter, but it does have its own specific remit as well. It is a collective network of activists, organizers, scholars, and that are unified in their fight for racial justice and equality, centering Black African and Black Caribbean communities, and citing historical racisms and racial inequalities throughout the UK. Excuse me. Black Lives Matter UK aims to challenge and change social, economic, and environmental injustices experienced by Black communities because of the way that they are racialized. The remit for Black Lives Matter aligns well within the parameters of International Decade for People of African Descent. Turning our focus to the specific part of the pillar on development and employing the UN Sustainable Development Goals number 10, which is to reduce inequality within and among countries, provides a general area under which concerns both the COVID-19 disparities and more general racial disparities and injustices that fit within the remit of IDPAD. So it would be good for the UK to jump on board, but unfortunately they have remained resistant. As the International Decade for People of African Descent identifies within its remit, racial and ethnic inequalities unfortunately remain within all nations in the world, and the UK is no exception. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Forms of Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerances, Dr. Tendai Echeumi, conducted a monitoring visit to the UK in 2018. Although there was limited areas of praise that she was able to identify around certain government policies around addressing racial and ethnic inequalities and measures for the reduction of racist hate crimes, the Special Rapporteur cited ongoing areas of concern regarding continued structural racial inequalities and discrimination across all 4 countries of the nation, which are England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. She stressed her findings that regardless of location, racial and ethnic minorities have worse outcomes in various areas of life, noting some key areas as decade-long austerity policies that we have here, the criminal justice system, counterterrorism initiatives, and immigration policies. Additionally, Achiumi attributed ongoing racism and discrimination to the current socio-political climate of the UK, pointing towards general public attitudes in the midst of UK referendum, the referendum to leave the European Union, the Windrush scandal, which is basically stripping away citizenship rights for people that lawfully immigrated to the UK from the 1940s onward, and ongoing hostile environment immigration policies, which have seek to put immigrants and visible minorities in a negative light by the white population. Her summary quote, which I thought was really stood out, was that the harsh reality is that race, ethnicity, religion, gender, disability status, and related categories all continue to determine the life chances and well-being of people in Britain in ways that are unacceptable and, in many cases, unlawful. The Special Rapporteur's UK visit was 2 years before the COVID-19 pandemic, but despite her concerns about her observed racial and ethnic disparities, they've only become more obvious and heightened since the COVID-19 pandemic that started this year. Due to multiple and complex factors, preliminary research indicates that racial and ethnic minorities are experiencing higher rates of diagnosis, levels of severity, and numbers of death than white populations in the UK. And of ethnic minorities here, Black populations are experiencing the worst of the disparities of all ethnic groups in the UK. For non-white populations, Black, Asian, and minority ethnic populations is the term that is commonly used here to describe basically non-white populations. It's a term used by government policy and some research bodies to categorize and discuss UK populations that are identified as not identified as white British. It's a contested term in that in other areas and sectors of society, there's a current dialogue in which voluntary and charity sectors don't like the term in that it implicates that the term does not have much practical use, and that by amalgamating diverse populations into one group, it serves to hide and obscure the specifics of what each group might come across in the UK, dependent on immigration history status, how long people have been here, language issues, a plethora of things. So it's not a universal term that everyone loves. It's usually used by people higher up to categorize people that are lower down. So generally, it refers to people who are non-white British. White groups who are not British are not consistently included into or excluded from this term. For example, white Irish or white other are not consistently part of BAME or not apart from it. So that can be confusing when you look at data. Right, so I think I've understood that. Okay, so 14% of the UK population on the UK census was BAME in 2011, although our current...
CLN?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I think you have to wind up now. It's 10 minutes is over.
Okay.
2 minutes you have to wind up.
All right. Okay, so I've barely scratched the surface. So I guess I'll basically, I'll scrap the presentation, but basically breaking it down, African and Caribbean populations, African populations seem to be more affected by COVID-19, and it's due to things like housing overcrowding, which is defined as more people in a household than rooms, which means that physical distancing is different. Underlying health conditions are particularly evident in Black populations, specifically Caribbean and African. Things like mental health, employment, occupation, financial resources, migration status, and structural and societal racisms are affecting Black populations in disparative ways. I think the general conclusion is, let's get to that slide. Is that to know more, data needs to be disaggregated consistently by race and ethnicity across all sectors and disciplines. The UK needs to continue and improve targeted COVID-19 health promotion, specifically to address cultural and language barriers and barriers with precarity of migration status. Improved ethnic representation at all levels of leadership within healthcare and social sectors, which will help to better accommodate BAME groups that are not that are unequal in terms of the disparities. The UK needs to address broad structural and social racial inequalities, and the UK needs to commit to implementing IDPAD at the national level. Sorry, I am wrapping up. I just need a couple more seconds. Ultimately, the data corroborates findings that racisms, racial inequalities, and other forms of discrimination are detrimental to health and well-being, and this is found in the racial disparities for underlying conditions of the population, as well as outcomes for COVID-19, effects on the lockdown measures on employment, finances, housing conditions, and racisms and racial abuse on physical and mental health. Widespread inequalities like these raise interesting questions for communities that are largely BAME or Black specifically, intersecting with levels of deprivation. The outlook for Black dominated areas around social and economic recovery are dim, with certain great challenges ahead that require great structural, economic, and community support. The COVID-19 pandemic in the UK has not created many of the areas of disparities for Black, African, and Black Caribbean diasporas. This has made clear that previous existing race inequalities that the ID pad and Black Lives Matter seek to address to eradicate various iterations of the world. The pandemic has illuminated the urgency for the necessary structural and restorative measures that Black communities have been needing for decades to achieve racial inequality in the UK. Thank you. And sorry for rushing through that.
Thank you so much, Chinelo. That was, I'm so glad that you came in when you did and you did your paper.
Thank you.
You take us through, again, very, very pressing and very important global matters. Black Lives Matter and how, and unfortunately, how it gets neglected, how it gets, it's a constant battle that has been, it's being fought across the world. And one incident triggers it, and then there are again people on the streets protesting, and then it happens yet again. So it's like a continual thing, and therefore the battle is a continuous battle. And you're very correct when you say that the discrimination that the Blacks, Asians, and as you very non-white British, as you put it. So what they're facing is not something new. This has been on, COVID has just exacerbated things and made it even worse. And that's point well noted. Again, I also thought like the others, because I'm sure this is part of a large study. It cannot be encapsulated in a 10-minute presentation. Because on the one hand, you're talking Black Lives Matter, and then you're also talking about the COVID affected situation, and then you're giving recommendations for how this can be mitigated somewhat. Obviously, COVID spreads when there is ghettoization, too many people crammed in the same areas, which is true of all spaces. So I would say it's pretty much the same in India, where the poorer people live in a certain manner, where the domestic workers live in a certain manner. And obviously it's going to be that bad. And where you have in our case, where we have ghettos, and where we have a certain kind of closed living due to poverty. So yeah, all your points are very well taken. Again, my only surmise would be that for a presentation and of this kind, a briefer and a more focused sort of paper works better than a large study. But I do look forward to reading this study, because I do want to see with what how the Black, as you say, the Black movement in the UK is obviously different from other spaces and other movements. So I would be interested in seeing how the issues are taken up and how it is moved forward in the kind of governance that you have currently. It's not going to be the easiest thing. Across the world, we have also very strange governance systems these days. I wouldn't want to name, but we all know who they are and who the battle is against. So yeah, all points very well taken, and would look forward to seeing this in the form of a book or something at some later point of time when you manage to work it out into that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't realize that the presentation was only 10 minutes, so I apologize for basically my lack of knowledge with everything. I don't know what's happened. It's just, there's been wires crossed or something. So thank you.
It's absolutely okay.
Okay, thank you.
So with the permission of the chair, shall we open this for any kind of queries and questions?
Questions, queries. You can also ask each other questions. You could put it in the chat box, or you could ask it live, since there are very few of us.
Okay, and so if nobody has any question, I have a question to Miss Ramisa. Okay, is she there? Okay. See, this is with regard to the question that you have in the presentation that you have made about the role of governmental and non-governmental organizations. But somewhere she did not mention much about the role of NGOs in the rehabilitation or integration that she spoke about. Can you throw some light on that, Ramisa? Shira. You did not mention much about the role of non-governmental organizations. So what was actually in your mind
sir,
when
yes,
you
sir.
spoke about that kind of, polarization of government and non-government organization? Second question is actually as part of that. What is so great about integration, especially in this condition? As you have mentioned about Professor Idudayarajan, that much of this return emigratory stream due to COVID is ephemeral, means it's not for a long time. So what do you expect, in terms of talking about integration? How far the structural condition allow us to integrate in the state of Kerala?
Thank you for pointing out, sir. Initially, the involvement of non-governmental organizations, yes, I'm well aware of the fact that my presentation somehow ended up focusing more on the policy level intervention from the part of government. Primarily because I am well aware of the political and religious affiliations of these non-governmental organizations, which sort of contributed more towards integration of return migrants. So I haven't given out any of the examples per se in my paper, but there are. For instance, there are so many examples like KMCC, the contributions from the part of KMCC, and then many religious associations. But as a researcher, I was right. Oh, in the
Ramisa, your voice is, I think, breaking.
yeah, and I don't believe integration. So,
Don't think we could hear you very well, Ramisa.
Okay, that's good.
But I think what she's saying is that she didn't give the examples, but they're there in her study. She's featuring them in the study. Is that right, Ramisa?
Yeah. That's so. Now others can ask questions if they have.
Nobody has anything to ask, anything to clarify from what your colleagues presented?
Let me see in the chat box. I think Professor Paddy has left the room, or if she has some comments or insights about that, then she can actually ask.
Paddy
She
has
has
left. Paddy has left.
Okay.
So we can conclude. We were well on time, so no problem. We need some rest.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Nandini Sen, for joining us and moderating things really well. And thank you all the participants for joining us in this very fruitful session. And thank you for all your participation, presentation, and fruitful insights to this conference.